Vibe coding just literally gave every single software engineer an edge, and it has nothing to do with coding. By the end of this video, you will be 12 months ahead at the bare minimum of every single AI agency guru that you see online who has never learned how to code properly. This is the same exact playbook our top founders inside Code to CEO, my startup accelerator, have used to hit 10 to 50K a month bare minimum. Now, a little about myself. My name is Buggo. Like many of you, I started off as a regular software engineer and then quit the corporate life to found my own seven-figure B2B AI consulting firm, AB Analytics. And now, today, I run Code to CEO as well, a startup accelerator dedicated to software engineers for transitioning into entrepreneurship. This video is for you if you ship with AI pretty regularly, you feel that there is a split coming that's going to differentiate those who use AI and those who do not use AI, and you refuse to be on the wrong side of it. This video is not for you if you haven't opened Claude Code in about 6 months, let's say. You still think AI is a fad, and you came here to feel better about coasting. Now, let's get straight into it. Understand that AI has made building dead simple. But that's exactly why real engineers have become a lot more valuable. Because building has become cheaper now, real engineers have become much more rare in the market in the grand scheme of things. Most people only see the first half, but they do not understand the second half. That is why they will lose this year and the upcoming ones. Secondly, almost 92% of vibe-coded apps have shipped with critical vulnerability in Q1 of 2026, okay? This is the second reason why this is so good for actual software engineers. And to kind of illustrate what I mean by this, Masa, one of our founders, secured a $10,000 project immediately. First project was paid. English wasn't even in his first language, using the same exact framework that I'm going to talk about today. And he now consistently makes over $10,000 a month just from 1 or 2 clients that he gets living in Japan. John, one of our top founders, $4.5 million acquisition offer that he received for his company that did AI automations for HVAC companies in the Bay Area. Chris, another Bay Area founder that literally on his first sales call ended up closing his first deal and has over $20,000 a month in pipeline just from referrals and individuals in his network. Paul, another one of our top founders, made more in the months of January and February of 2026 than he did in the previous year with his 9-to-5, okay? These are all examples of individuals who use exactly what we're gonna talk about, the same exact 3 moves every single time to do what exactly they did. And those moves are validating before they build, using AI as a typist, not an architect, and selling the project before they write 1 line of code, okay? Vibe coders do not understand this. And even most engineers don't quite understand this. This is why, if you pair what I'm going to be talking about in this video, you will beat everybody straight out of the water. So let's get started with session 1, the split that nobody's really talking about. Everybody is currently panicking about AI replacing developers, but they're sort of reading it backwards. Let me explain what I mean. Whenever you have a typical vibe coder, right, this can either be a software engineer who partakes in vibe coding, or it can be a non-technical founder, or just a non-technical person who's vibe coding. Generally speaking, what they do is they ship a prototype, they try to get it out as quickly as possible, they run up a quick demo on it, and it only pretty much ends up working on the founder's laptop, right? They don't really stress test it with a bunch of users, they're hoping it makes money, so their essential tactic is shooting as many bullets out of their gun as possible and hoping one of them hits the target. Whereas an actual software engineer with a proper strategy, when they ship a product, right, it is able to survive 10,000s of strangers, right? It doesn't go down, and it's something that is debuggable at, let's say, 2 a.m. or any given moment throughout the day, because they understand what they built. 46% of all new code shipped in 2026 is AI generated, and 1 in 5 of these breaches actually trace back to the same exact AI generated code. Once again, this is in 2026 alone. So understand that this vibe coding flood that's happening with all the security issues, all these leaks, it is not a threat for you as a proper software engineer. It is literally the filter that you've been asking for this entire time. It filters out people who do not know what they're building, who do not know how to actually go about doing these things. And understand, vibe coding, AI, never killed a developer as people might think it did. It simply killed the guru. It killed every single AI agency guy that is literally one lovable breach away from being uninsurable. And sure, the small time people that are doing stuff for, let's say, their local businesses for $1,000 or $1,500, right? Those guys might be able to get away with it. But if you start getting into industries such as healthcare, right? Hospice, home health, hospitals, if you start getting into stuff like law firms, anything that requires any type of compliance or client data, you will not be able to vibe code that without a proper software engineer at the forefront of the entire project leading it, okay? So we're basically at a point where the panic narrative is entirely incorrect. This flood that's happening, all it's doing is really filtering out all the fakers. And the split is already taking place in real time. Your edge as a software engineer is the gap that nobody can truly copy, okay? So there's 6 specific sinkholes that vibe coders fall into that real developers do not. They walk right over them. So let's talk about what these 6 are. First and foremost, the second feature cliff, okay? Whenever you try to build something out using vibe coding, as many of you will know, let's say you're using Claude Code to build something out, the first feature is going to be relatively trivial. It will be able to do it if it's going to be a boilerplate or anything of that sort. But the more features you start adding on, AI begins to lose context and it starts overriding working code. This is when you get the hallucinations, and this is when you essentially have your entire project just completely demolished. Most agencies ship the MVP, so the feature 1, but when it comes to actually expanding on it, they begin stalling. I have seen this time and time again. After our firm, AB Analytics, we branched out in LA and we started getting a bunch of clients. We had other clients come to us that were complaining about other agencies, especially foreign agencies coming out of specifically Asia, that were taking on these development projects. And the MVP would look good on a demo call, but then the final full-fledged application that they swore they were going to build out was just completely lackluster, and they had to hire another proper developer to be able to review everything and make sure everything looks fine and fix anything that they messed up. Why? Because most people were vibe coding. People take on difficult projects, difficult tasks, assuming they're going to be able to vibe code it, not realizing the more features they add, as of right now, at least in 2026, AI is going to lose context over that. It's not going to be able to write it properly. You need to be a developer to do these things. A good way to think about this is if we have greenfield and brownfield. AI is really good at greenfield, but it's absolutely garbage at brownfield, okay? If there's no constraints, AI is going to shine. It's going to do it really well. But if there are constraints, and understand, every single real business has constraints, real systems, real history, real consequences. The business becomes the brownfield, which means AI, for the most part, is going to be completely garbage at this. You're going to need a proper software engineer behind it. The second sinkhole that I've seen time and time again, especially when it came to me trying to hire individuals for the firm to be able to outsource a lot of the projects that we do, the problem we came upon were that most individuals, quote unquote vibe coders, who were building stuff out to fulfill, they were not able to debug their own things without the help of AI. And oftentimes, AI is not always the best debugger. So what would end up happening? They would build something out, they were not able to debug it, and I would literally have to either go in myself or get another proper senior developer to go ahead and take a look at it themselves. And keep in mind, when you're running a business, you cannot afford to do this. Not only does it look bad on you, but it's also extremely hurtful and discombobulating to the client's operations, especially if the software is a critical component of what it is that they're doing. So if you can't debug it at 2 a.m., you don't actually own whatever the hell it is that you vibe coded. Vibe coders will prompt blindly into a complete black box and pray that it actually works, okay? But once again, in a real life scenario, if you vibe code something that you cannot debug in case something goes wrong, you are not going to have a very successful time as a business owner. You're not going to stay for too long. And business is not a sprint, it is a marathon. It's not about how much money you can make in 1 year. It's about how much money you can make in 10 years in a row, 15 years in a row, 20 years in a row, and how much can you really scale, right? So it's a marathon. And understand that the client is never buying your code as a software engineer. They're buying the human accountable for the code and the product that they're building. Vibe coders cannot sell accountability, they cannot deliver. That's the whole game. This is why you have so many burned businesses that complain about AI agencies because you have non-technical people over-promising, selling projects that they are not able to properly actually fulfill, okay? Sinkhole number 3, the trust ceiling. So most individuals, when they're vibe coding, you can vibe code internal dashboards, habit trackers, weekend tools. These are all safe to vibe code, at least to a certain degree. However, when you start getting into the territory of authentication, payments, healthcare, legal, enterprise data, right? You have SOC 2 and all these things. When you start getting into these type of compliance territories that have to do with social security numbers of patients or things like that, you cannot vibe code that. I have seen so many home healths here in Los Angeles that tried to actually hire developers from Upwork and Fiverr, and all they ended up hiring were vibe coders because there were so many of them. They ended up hiring vibe coders to build stuff out, and they got hit with a bunch of fines because a lot of their stuff was not HIPAA or not SOC 2 compliant. And the vibe coders, obviously they're going to say, yes, don't worry, we'll do everything for you, we're going to get everything done, and yet they are not able to properly deliver. This is why, no matter what the situation, for actual problems, for things in this category, you are going to require the expertise of a software engineer that knows what they're doing, that can actually be able to lead a lot of the other vibe coders. And once again, there are 2.74 times more security vulnerabilities in AI written code as opposed to human written code, okay? Sinkhole number 4, the estimation collapse. Now, whenever it comes to building any type of project out, what I've also noticed is that the first 80% of that project is somewhat effortless. Setting up the boilerplate and all these things is relatively easy to do when it comes to vibe coding. But the last 20% is where the project either lives or just completely dies. And it's where everything that actually matters. So what I've seen time and time again, especially with a lot of the clients that we work with, whenever they've been burned by another agency, particularly AI agency that vibe coded the operations, is let's say they had a 6 months timeline to build something out. The first 3-4 months went great. They were able to give updates. They said the MVPs on time. All this stuff is happening. But that last 2 months, that last stretch where they need to finalize everything, make sure everything's compliant, make sure everything lives, wherever it's being hosted properly, and there's nothing that's incorrect or nothing that's causing a certain problem, it always ends up failing because once again, AI does not have enough context for all of these things, at least as of right now. And even if it does, most vibe coders do not know how to prompt and work with it properly, such that they can have that happen. And what ends up happening is a 6 month long project, first 4 months goes by, and the last 2 months where they need to finish it out, that last 20%, ends up taking, let's say, 5 times longer than what they said in the beginning, always. And once again, agencies overpromise. This is how non-technical people are able to sell. They tend to overpromise a lot. But engineers, we tend to code a lot more accurately. One builds retainers and then one burns them. Agencies overpromise, they miss their deadlines, and then they lose their client when month 2 comes, okay? But engineers, the actual software engineers, they code accurately, they hit the deadline, and they actually earn the retainer of that company. Once again, keep in mind, there's plenty of AI agencies here in LA now. I am one of the only software engineer-led ones, okay? I'm one of the co-founders. I'm a software engineer by trade, and the other co-founder is an actuary by trade. We have seen the market inside out as to how it works, and I am telling you, so many people are not understanding how to properly fulfill and run a business when it comes to AI and just vibe coding in general. I'm not even going to get into the personal project section. I'm just talking about in terms of running a business as a software engineer. Okay? Now, the other sinkhole, the explain it to me test. A lot of the times, especially if we've been working with a lot more of a technical individual, we've gotten questions where they've asked, okay, why did you build it this way? And we have an answer for that, but vibe coders do not. Actually, it started happening so much on sales calls that whenever we are actually going to pitch something or we're going to sell a service or something of that sort, one of the more common questions that we've been getting asked is, why are you going to build it this way? Or why use this versus that? We start getting asked technical questions, sort of like on a technical interview, which is really weird. And it's not that they actually care about it. They just want to know that we know what the heck we're doing because they've gotten burned so many times from, once again, vibe coders. And these vibe coders, they can be technical people, they can be non-technical people. The point is, clients stopped asking us, can you build it? Now they're asking us, why are you building it this way, right? Number 6, the retainer vacuum. If anybody can vibe code it, you might be wondering, why does the client need you when month 2 comes along after you've already done everything? Well, real developers build the modes out of architectural decisions that clients cannot replicate, and that's the actual retainer. So let's talk about the 6 sinkholes. The second feature cliff, the 2 a.m. test, right? The trust ceiling, the estimation collapse, the explain it test, as well as the retainer vacuum. Let's move on to session number 3. Why everything we just talked about, the 6 sinkhole tests, reprices everything that we know. And this is what makes you expensive as a software engineer in today's market. Now, the sinkhole and all the stuff we talked about is only a con if you can't actually code, right? But if you can code, the sinkholes justify the high rate you're going to charge because you can say, look, every other vibe coder is going to mess this up for you. The 2 a.m. becomes your retainer because you can actually go ahead and debug it if it's required. And why this way? You'll be able to close the call because you can actually answer that question properly should it ever come up, okay? So those last 6 slides that we discussed with the sinkholes, they're problems for the regular vibe coder. But for you as a software engineer who understands what they're doing, they describe pricing power, okay? Vibe coding made writing code free, but it made knowing code a lot more expensive than what it already was, okay? Every single market that drops the cost of one thing has to reprice the judgment around it every single time. This is true regardless of industry, regardless of whatever. It is just a law. So AI made code cheap, but it made judgment extremely scarce. Price of code went down, but the value of judgment on how to utilize that code went up. And most of you watching this video have spent multitude of years, some of you multiple decades, on building this exact scarce thing. The rest of the internet has just figured out the cheap thing. This happened exactly with web development. If you take a look back in 2005, web development became relatively commoditized. You had the birth of kind of like point and click and these massive websites where you could just develop a website just from there, website building websites, right? And what ended up happening is, despite what people might have thought, senior architects, especially front-end ones, ended up becoming a lot more expensive, okay? Not less. So you've seen this time and time again. There are no exceptions to this. The cheap thing always floods, and the hard thing always gets repriced. Always. Same thing is going to happen with vibe coding. It's already happening. So every broken vibe coded app is also a paying client waiting. You don't understand how many times we've gotten reached out by people saying, look, I wanted to build out an app, I hired somebody off Fiverr, or I hired somebody off Upwork, or I tried to do it myself, I spent this many tokens on doing it, or I spent this much money on building it out, and I've made a complete mess, like it's half working, half not, I don't know what's wrong with it, can you please take a look at it, do an audit, see if it's revivable or if we need to start again. We've gotten that so many times that we literally have to tell them like, look, this is not what we do. We can refer you to somebody who actually does this. But the sheer amount of people that have been burnt by this is just astronomical. That's why there's an entirely new market for this now. And understand that whenever there's a breach, whenever there's an audit, or whenever a lawsuit hits, only a real software engineer will be able to sit in the room and actually go ahead and take care of the problem. So if you take a look at for some of the compliance stuff, like a SOC 2 setup, here in Southern California, that's going to run you $3,250K minimum. There's fines such as the EU AI Act that can fine up to 35 million euros for missing documentation. Okay, vibe coders are not going to be eligible for either conversation because they're not going to know how to actually do this properly, at least most of them. But a real engineer knows what they don't know. That's why the quote that they make lands right. That's why the retainer actually sticks. They know the unknowns, they price accurately, and they are able to keep the client. So every sinkhole is an engineer's moat, and every broken app is an engineer's invoice. What kills the vibe coder literally pays your bills. So instead of thinking that this is a replacement of you, this is very good news for you because everything that the vibe coders right now are doing, rushing all the fulfillment, all the security vulnerabilities and all these things, that is literally increasing your price in the market. So where are we? Well, code got cheaper, obviously, but judgment got more scarce. Commoditization always, understand that commoditization always reprices the hard thing upward. Every broken vibe coded app is a now potential future client, and compliance is now a moat only real engineers can stand inside. Okay? So let's talk about how real engineers actually utilize AI and how most devs currently are using it completely backwards. Devs expect it to be 24% faster with AI, but in reality, they were 19% slower. But if you ask them, they still felt about 20% faster. So very interesting statistic. The tool itself isn't broken, okay? The prompter is. AI confidence does not mean that you are AI competent, okay? Only an engineer can close that gap. And this is where the real bread and butter comes into play. Whenever you take a look at the average vibe coder workflow, this is what it looks like. They prompt something, they accept it, or they just click the edit automatically button in Claude, right? They ship it and then they pray that they get users. This is the 19% slower group. In reality, what a software engineer does to properly go ahead and vibe code is they first validate the problem, the idea that they have. Then they will architect the solution in their head, prompt it with proper constraints in a Claude MD file, verify it, ship it, and then maintain it. It's the same AI, but it's a completely different operator with a completely different outcome, okay? Real engineers do not quit vibe coding. They just know when to stop. That is the biggest fundamental difference between somebody that knows vibe coding and doesn't. It's not that one does it better than the other, it's that one knows when to stop and the other doesn't. Now, talking about Claude, a good Claude MD file is going to be worth more than a weekend of vibe coding, okay? Once again, only an engineer thinks in constraints, and that's the prompt edge that nobody outside the trade actually has. Most vibe coders, especially non-technical, they are not going to bother with a Claude MD file. In fact, so many people that I've spoken with do not even know what it is. Only a software engineer with proper coding knowledge is going to know and understand what it really is. And only a proper one is going to have it set up to even produce any type of good result, okay? This is because, once again, engineers are going to be able to spot the hallucinations before it even hits production. Vibecore is going to ship it, find it out at about 2 a.m., and engineers are going to catch it in 3 seconds and move on. So where are we with this? Well, AI slows down most developers, but it speeds up the ones who actually think first before applying. You can keep vibing. You just need to stop vibing in the wrong places. A Claude MD file is going to be more leveraged than 1,000 different prompts, and you're going to be able to catch hallucinations the rest of the internet cannot see. Now, let's get into session number 5, service delivery. Service delivery is now the easiest part, and that terrifies most developers. They think, okay, what is the point of myself now if the thing that I do, coding, has now become the easiest thing on the planet? Well, you shouldn't think this way, because you can actually pivot. For the first time in a decade, building is the easiest part of the job. What's left is what most devs have been hiding from their entire career. 4 soft skills that devs used to avoid. Now they have become the whole game. Validation, sales, positioning, and communication. Okay? Most agencies that you see already have somewhat of a head start on these soft skills that we just discussed. What they're lacking is your technical credibility. So while they're able to get clients easier, they are not able to properly fulfill and maintain a good quality standard. And while people can say, yes, sales is important, getting clients is important, 100% it's important. But the most important factor of a business is if you are able to give a result to your client. If you cannot give a result, nothing else matters. You will die out. Once again, this is not a race, this is a marathon. This is why engineers have an overwhelming advantage here, because on a fundamental level, they can guarantee a good interaction with the client. They can properly deliver, they can get them results. All they need to do is catch up to the actual skills that they need to close the client in the first place, okay? So if you add these 4 skills to your tool stack, right, your skill stack, I should say, you're gonna pass every single agency or guru in your market in less than a year. And nobody's talking about this because most of the agencies out there don't want you to figure it out. They don't want the extra competition. Session number 6, the validation layer, okay? I know as a software engineer, the first thing you want to do is code, but line 1 of code is the last thing that you write. And this is where we get into more of the finer details. The wrong order to do things is to build something, pray that you get users, and then you actually look for users. The right order is to talk to the users in the first place, get paid, and then build the thing. Generally, I recommend having 5 conversations, 1 deposit, and 0 lines of code. And only then can you open your Claude Code to actually begin typing. All of our founders inside Code2CEO have done this. This is just a few of the individuals from our Japan mastermind that came over. But Thufik, Marco, Sandra, Demir, Chris, Balaj, Carl, all of them have followed the same exact formula. Having the conversations first, validating it, and then only after they've gotten paid do they begin building it out. So where are we? Well, validation has become the highest leverage hour of your week now. Not building anymore, because building can be done like this. Validation is the most important, such that you don't waste your time on building something mundane or useless. 5 conversations is going to beat 5 weeks of building, because once again, you spending months building something that nobody's going to buy, it's pointless. And you have to get a deposit before you write a line of code now. And of course, last but not least, session 7, the communication layer. And this is what really bridges you from code to CEO. First and foremost, you cannot have any tech jargon. You need to link every single point to revenue or time, okay? So instead of saying we refactored the data layer, you need to say we saved the team 30 hours a week. That's $300,000 a year. And what you want to do is follow the problem, agitate, solve method for this. You want to lead with the pain. You want to make that pain real for them. And then you want to offer a solution. You need to do this for every single meeting, every single PR, every single sales call. This is the entire framework you need to understand as a software engineer for how to actually be successful in today's market. Everything leads with pain. You want to make that pain recognizable. You want to agitate their pain, and you want to offer a solution to that pain. Good way to think about this is, instead of thinking you're a salesperson, imagine yourself as a doctor. You want to first diagnose them, and then you want to prescribe them. Clients do not pay for the prescription. They actually pay for the diagnosis. And one of our founders literally said that Code2CEO made them realize there's a lot more you need than technical skills to run a tech business. And I know tech skills, tech business, that's all you might need, but there's a lot more to it than that, right? That's what we were talking about. So where are we? Well, communication beats code at every single salary ceiling. This was true back then. This is even more true now with coding becoming commoditized. You need to strip jargon of your conversation as a software engineer. You need to link everything to either revenue or time or both. You need to lead with pain and then offer to fix that pain. And you need to diagnose before you prescribe any type of solution. Okay? Now we're getting into more of the soft skills side of things. Okay? Let's talk about the positioning layer, session 8. This is where the noise stops and the money starts. Online is noisier than ever. But on a local level, it's been emptier than ever because there's so much focus on the digital landscape. You want to be the only engineer in your city that the city knows by name, okay? And this is a strategy that you will not see anywhere else being talked about because everybody is chasing the shiny object of becoming digitally famous, digitally popular. However, based on what I did with my own business, I realized I don't need to be the biggest. I just need to spend a year to 2 years building my name up in my city such that most of the business owners know me by name and what I do, and I will have more success than I could have ever dreamed of. Join your chamber of commerce. Go to the local events. If there's one face there that people are constantly seeing, looking at, there's going to be no online competition. And the window is open, but it's not going to stay open for long, okay? And what you want to do is you want to choose a very boring vertical and target a very painful problem, and you get an open lane. A few of the examples that we've done work with ourselves: dental intake processes, HVAC routing, freight dispatch, law firm documentation, specifically for onboarding, manufacturing inventory, all these things. These are just 5 examples that I've given you, but you can find a lot more, okay? What you need to do is identify that blue ocean that's in your particular unique advantage. Unique advantage stands for your location, your network, and your experiences. So at the segue of all these 3 things, you will find your blue ocean where there's nobody there, you have no competition, and you can just do what you ought to do, okay? Everybody else focusing on email assistants, note takers, GPT wrappers, image generators, there's way too many clones out there. You can try to go that path, but why when you have a better opportunity cost here? Okay? And understand, your competition is not the internet. You are not yet that big. You're not Amazon. You're not Tesla. You're not any of these multi-billion, multi-trillion dollar companies where you have to worry on an international level or even on a national level. All you have to worry about is on literally a local level. The plumbing company down the street bringing in $150,000 a month, that's who you have to actually take a look at. That's your client. That person doesn't even know that you exist, but not more than half of the businesses in your city that are like this plumbing company or other suburb-based businesses are going to require your assistance. But there's nobody targeting them because either people believe there's not enough money in a local scene, which is just ludicrous, especially if you're in any US city. Millions of dollars every single day flow through most US cities. Like if you're anywhere from California or New York, or even I would say nowadays Texas, Oregon, right? Any of the coastal cities, this is a no-brainer for you. If you're located somewhere outside of the US, maybe down in, let's say, third world country, then I would say, okay, maybe it's better to go online. But even then, I would still urge you to take a look at your local landscape. So where are we? Online has become extremely saturated. Everybody and their mother is creating a personal brand. Everybody's trying to do things online, leaving the local to be extremely empty. Nobody's really focusing on the local level. A lot of the older generation is, but that's also, they're the boomers and they're slowly now retiring. So there's not going to be really anybody that's focusing on the local level too much. Boring verticals plus painful problem equals no competition for you. That's what you need to get into because everybody's trying to do something hype or, something that's popular or something that's fun. If you're going to something boring that has painful problems, you're going to make a lot of money. And your goal is to become niche famous in your city. Become the AI guy, become the software guy in your city. It's really not that hard. All you need to give yourself is 1 to 3 years and you'll be able to get there in no time. And Chamber of Commerce for this is an absolute cheat code. You can also take a look at BNI, Business Network International, if you have a chapter in your city. Session 9, the sales layer. This is the part that devs hate the most, but this is also the part that pays the most. Whenever you are dealing with sales, any type of sales call, or if you're going to close something, you want to talk as little as possible. The less you say, the more they buy. You talk 20%, they talk 80%. This is usually the sweet spot. After a question, you want to say nothing. The next thing they say is the thing you need to hear. So discomfort is information. Hold to the silence. Learn how to be silent. A lot of the mistakes that I've seen software engineers make, especially as I've been coaching them, is they cannot sit still in a call or even in person whenever they're selling something. They'll say something and then they'll want to fill in the silence, they'll get nervous and they'll blabber on some more. Do not do that. Get comfortable with the silence. Okay? Yes priming. Understand yes priming. Does that sound like a plan? They can only say yes. Does this make sense? Yes. Ready to get started? Yes. Every yes makes the final yes inevitable. There's an actual study that was done on this. The more yes people say, the higher likely that they're going to say yes to your next question. Prime example, Chris, his first ever sales call he went on, he ended up closing. And now he's going even on more sales call, closing higher ticket deals. But like I said, the most important thing here is not to position yourself as a stereotypical salesman, but as a trusted advisor, more so like a doctor, okay? So where are we with this? Well, understand you're more a doctor, you're not a salesperson. You want to remember the 20-80 talk ratio. Silence is a closing tool, you need to get comfortable with it. And yes priming does compound, and trusted advisor positioning wins. None of these, any of the AI agency gurus guys are going to be able to do properly because once again, you have the overwhelming advantage as a software engineer when it comes to anything tech related. So what can you do this week now that you've watched this? What can you take away from here? Well, you need to audit your own AI workflow. Are you using AI as a typist or as an actual architect? Only one of those is going to pay out, okay? Number 2, score your current idea. What's your ICP? Where's your trust, the maintainability, the distribution? Do you have any of these or do you not? If you don't, scrap it, start again. Pick one local vertical. Utilize your network. Walk into local businesses. Ask family, friends. Talk to people. Identify what's happening in the dental space, HVAC space, freight space, legal, manufacturing. Pick one local vertical with one extremely painful problem and build out a solution for them after you get validation. Whenever you find this particular problem, okay, have 5 validation conversations before you open Cloud Code, before you pick a stack, before you do anything. Have these validation conversations to get paid before you build something out. If you run these 4 every single week, every single day you try to do this, in 90 days you will not recognize yourself because you'll be so far ahead of the average person. And this was never about AI, understand that. It was always about the engineer who built a moat that AI cannot touch. Your validation, your trust, the communication, positioning, accountability, none of these are going to be able to be replaced by prompting, Okay, AI cannot copy these. These are 5 things no prompt will ever build for you. These are 5 things that will never be able to get replaced or taken from you. And 2026 is the year a real engineer can charge 10 to 50 in a bare minimum per month with a mode that no agency can really copy. One of our founders, John, literally got to his 50K a month in about 3 months. Very boring vertical, but it was validated and it was local to him. So if you just do these 3 this week, score 1 idea by Friday, run 5 validation conversations before writing 1 line of code, and pick 1 local vertical before end of the week Sunday, you will get there. The window is open, but like I said, it's not going to stay open for long. Every month you wait, another agency learns to fake what you already have. And I actually saw news that, if I'm not mistaken, OpenAI and Anthropic are looking to build their own consultancies. They're first going to start with obviously Fortune 500, but then they're going to get to small businesses as well. So this window is really only open for the next couple of years, but take full advantage of it. You don't need too much time. In 1 year, you can become basically a celebrity in your city for all the people that need to know you, all the business owners. Now, to understand how to do this properly, I will be holding a free live masterclass on specifically Cloud Code. And I'm going to explain how to make 50K a month with it as a developer. And I'm going to be talking about the highest leverage use cases. These are all coming from my own experience building a multi-million-dollar company and actually fulfilling, utilizing Cloud Code till to this day. So everything that I'm going to be talking about is going to be from the context of a software engineer running a business. Now, if you want to work with me directly, apply to code2co.com. It's a 5-minute application. If you get accepted, you will hop on a call with me and then we'll talk. There's only 3 spots left, application only. And remember, it's only for software engineers. Now, to close this off, vibe coding handed you the biggest edge of your career. You really just have to go and utilize it properly. And I know the video is pretty much over, so you guys can click off. But for those of you who are staying, I want to say one thing. This truly is the best opportunity of your lives if you utilize it properly. You might have a lot of limiting beliefs right now, just arguing with me in your mind, no, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, no, that's not how it works, I'm in a different location, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. You might come up with every single excuse in the book to not go out and do this. But as long as you just understand there really is no competition to you on a local level, as long as you choose a proper vertical to go into, 1 niche that you want to own, and you dedicate a year to it, a year of becoming famous for that particular thing, you will make more money than you know what to do with. And I can guarantee that. Every single founder inside Code2Co that had ample time to do exactly that, fast forward a year to 1.5 years, every single one has become a local celebrity and every single one has achieved a lot more success than they thought they would be able to. Once again, thank you so much for watching and I hope you have a good rest of your day.